Chadds Ford's a very woodsy area. It's a really beautiful part of Pennsylvania. There's a lot of rolling hills, a lot of random roads that go different spots. I come from a family of visual artists. In a lot of the ways my mom fostered music in the household, like she would play music for us when you were young. She would be like, hey, like try to figure out a dance move to this song, or like different things like that. My dad's influence musically on me really came from his selection of like records that he dug. Like I remember he would drive me to school in the morning and he'd have like Santana playing, or like Jethro Tull. Like he would kind of show me some like records and be like, you never heard of these guys? And it would like, kind of pique your interest, you know? But I always thought my dad had a cool record collection. A couple of my friends started a punk rock band, and I played saxophone in the punk rock band, and one of the bass players quit or something, or somebody didn't want to play bass anymore, and they're like, oh dude, bass is easy, like let's just, like Greg can play saxophone pretty good, let's try to get him to play the bass. After I got my hands on a bass, I was like, wow, like this is so much different than saxophone, like, and I just like, and that was it. That's when I like stopped going to school. Like I started like getting super into guitar. I bought a guitar for $90 in this little farm music store called Del Biddle, who's a good friend of mine still. And I bought a yellow Stratocaster knockoff that was $90. That was it. That was like the genesis of like obsession for me, you know? I got asked to start playing in a few churches in Philadelphia, particularly black churches. I heard that there was always like great musicians in the gospel churches. And Philadelphia has an amazing music scene. The biggest takeaway I got from learning music in the church is that the church musicians, they learn music completely different. They learn music like completely by ear. I kind of learned from those musicians in a lot of ways, like how to use my ears in a completely different way. Kind of how I did when I first started learning how to play, where I was using my ears all the time and being like, that's this chord, recognizing the sound of it, not the name of it. So it was cool to like be in a scenario where you're using your ear constantly, because sometimes you don't know the next song you're gonna play. And if you don't know the song, you have to hear the song. The biggest takeaway was like, oh, this is how some of the best music is made, is by purely with your ear, you know? Moving to New York from Philadelphia was a arduous process. At that point in time, I had quite a bit of gear, like 5 or 6 guitars, a bunch of different keyboards, 3 or 4 different keyboards, microphones. Most people say that they like having musician roommates, or not most people say that. People in the beginning say they like it, but then when they start living with you, it's a whole other thing. When I started producing in Philadelphia, I was living at my grandparents' house at the time. And I think it was like hard to get them to come over to my grandparents' house to like cut vocals and stuff like that. So I started like singing the demos myself on the records. And then I kind of found out during that process that I was like, I didn't like the way my voice sounded, but I also was like, this could be a good demo. Like maybe I could pitch this to somebody else. That's essentially how Yellow Shoots started, was sort of out of necessity of like trying to get tracks finished, you know? I recorded my first album in a little room, I think it was like 705 or 704. Yeah, 704. And yeah, I did some of the drums in here, some of the more live stuff in this room. So when I first started putting together the songs for everything, I didn't have a plan to make an album. It was only after I put out the song Make It to the Summer. I was making a lot of keyboard-driven music. My like home base has always been playing the guitar, and I was kind of always running away from it. It was kind of like how I recorded my vocals. Like, I didn't like how my vocals sounded. I didn't like how my guitar sounded. And then something clicked for me. I think it was like after I did a few sessions with people, I think it was like after working with Illmind and working with a few other folks, that I was like, wait a second, my guitar is the thing that I'm like I excel at. Getting calls from like different folks, like sample makers and friends that do that type of thing, and I built with Splice like 4 or 5 packs. A few with my friend Jeremy Lawrence, who goes by Treehouse, and a few on my own as Yellow Shoots as a creator. I was privy to the sample world working with Illmind because he's like the king of like drum samples, and that was really cool to be around that. I've had some really interesting collabs over the last year or two, one of which was Amare, Gilligan Moss, Soft Glass. Amare was pretty cool. She's a producer and engineer as well, so I think she downloaded a few of the samples from Mama's Little Secret, which was one of my first Yellow Shoots packs. I was so low at one point, but all these signals started coming through. People wanted to collaborate with me. I was getting phone calls, and I was like, where is this coming from? And I think it was like the aftermath of like the album. It was the aftermath of like things I had done the previous year or two. The Green Album is a lot different than everything, because everything was made over the course of like a year or 2 years. The lyrics in the Green Album, they talk to very specific parts and experiences of my life, where I feel like my previous lyrical work danced around with a lot more imagination, I would say, with like fantasy and sort of like world building. But this album brought a lot of my experiences down to the ground, and like I felt more comfortable actually talking about that in this album.
Yeah, cool.
Still recording, right, Josh? Thanks, bro. The song Sama on the Green Album it's a personal song because it started off super simple. It started on the guitar, and I had this like phrase in my head. It said, "Talk is cheap," and it sort of was like kind of echoing like, you know, just because like you see words flash across a page doesn't mean it's true. This song really kind of speaks to like being a backbone for someone, or someone being a backbone for you. And this is I would say this album's really a personal gem for me, or it's a personal piece for me, and I just wanted to make it, you know, I make music for other people, and I make music for myself, but this one really was very personal, so maybe someone else can find a connection to that. If not, that's cool as well. Getting the hang of this shit. Woo! Getting the hang of it.